Hi, everyone, and welcome to Practice Growth HQ. Now, today is going to be a slightly different interview. We're going to look at the journey from healthcare professional in many ways to someone who's had their finger in a lot of different pies. And if I were to continue and talk about all of the areas that this person's done, you'd start to say there's only a handful of people who could possibly do this. But let's just say started as a clinician, certainly a very prominent speaker, very prominent educator, and if I understand correctly, these days spending a lot of their time, in fact, marketing dental practices. So all the way from Fort Lauderdale in Florida, welcome Anissa Holmes.
Thank you so much for having me, Angus. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, Anissa, we like to start our interviews with a fast five, kind of quicker questions, quicker answers to get to know you quickly. Question one, where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the States. Yeah.
Very good. I visited there for the first time last week.
Nice.
Yeah, interesting place. Question two,
Yep.
favorite book besides your own?
Oh, there's so many. Right now, I think it's very impactful for many people is 10x is easier than 2x, Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Yes, I'm nodding vigorously. I would say I've read a book a week for the last 4 years, and I usually have a book of the year every year. That was my book of the year for last year. That's an incredible book.
Yeah. It's a business book, but on a personal, like David Hawkins, like consciousness. There's a lot of spirituality. There's so many different books, right? But on the business side, I think that
Yeah,
one is really very helpful and impactful. Yeah.
very good. Question three, what's one of your superpowers apart from adaptability?
I think that I have the ability to see things before many other people can see them. And I think that's really helped me to be able to help a lot of people with coaching and seeing things before they see them, but also trends in marketing and really being an early adopter and innovator. So I think that's really my superpower. Yeah.
Absolutely. Question four, something you wish your 20-year-old self knew.
My 20-year-old self, you're going to have an amazing life. Just hang in there.
I like it. I like it. And finally, Anissa, question five, something you're grateful for.
Honestly, I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for my family, my experiences. I'm grateful for my failures and stepping through fear and getting into courage and getting to the point now where I really see my purpose and impact. So, yeah, the journey.
Indeed, indeed. I think we're going to circle back to your failures because I may be wrong, but I feel like this is possibly the first time that's been mentioned on this show. And I think we're at episode 140, 150, and I've never had anybody mention that. Why don't let's pause there for a second before we get on with the rest of the interview, because I think your journey, I mean, honestly, for the listeners, the number one thing I want you to pick out of this show is Anissa's journey. I've known her from afar for probably a decade now. And even for me, I've been just amazed at the sort of transformation that she's gone through. And yet here are you saying thankful for your failures. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We go through our journey, and oftentimes people get stuck. They get stuck in fear, right? Fear of not being successful, fear of being liked, fear if what if I do things wrong, right? And my belief is that we have to look at failure and we have to say what was a lesson that it was there to teach us. And once we do, we can thank it. We can thank you. Thank you for teaching me that. And so we can now understand the truth. What were we afraid of? Why were we afraid of it? What did we hear that wasn't the truth? Maybe it's like, you can't do this because the reason why you can't do this is because this is for other people or this is not meant for you. And so that keeps us in fear. And so when we start to realize, well, where did that come from? What was the source? And maybe it came from childhood. It was like, well, people that don't look like you or people who I'm a woman, that's meant for men or that's meant for people that don't look like you. And so it keeps us in this fear state of like, we can't do it or it's not for us. And so when we actually start to navigate through it and we start to get courage, then again, when things fail, we're like, wow, what did that teach us? And so I've had many failures, right? Like my dental practice, going from being a practice owner, I completely hired the wrong teams at times. And what did that teach me? It taught me how to hire correctly. And I'm so grateful. So I can now thank that experience, right? Or as I got into coaching, there have been times when somebody might see it as a failure where I've had as many as 100 coaching clients and it's gone down to 50. And what did I learn? What was it there to teach me? Maybe it was there to teach me that I needed to be more present, or maybe it was there to teach me that there was actually something else that I was supposed to do. And so I can thank it. And so I think it's really interesting because a lot of people stay stuck in that energy of fear. And once we can navigate through it, then now we can start to have gratitude, and then we start to elevate up into courage and love and peace and happiness and abundance and joy. And that's where I'm at now. Like, you were asking me, what did I do before this call? This morning was great. I walked my dog on the beach, but after that, I had 5 powerful 1-hour conversations with doctors today, and about stepping into their power and their purpose and thinking much bigger than what they ever would have imagined. I'm seeing them literally transform into my eyes to become the people that they've been called to be, to say, yeah, I was doing 1 million, but now, you know what? I realize that there's an abundance of sleep patients all around me. They're all around me.
Mm.
And I'm there to be called to heal them, and there's no lack, and start to live in a life of there's no lack. And so it's just been really beautiful when you start to navigate out of that lower frequency, where now you can start to really help people, and you understand that it was there to actually give you empathy. Because when I make mistakes that other people made, then I can understand when they come to me and say, I'm making this mistake because I made it too.
Mm.
And now I can actually help them. And yeah, maybe this is a little different interview than what you've had
No,
before, but I think
it is, and I'm glad we're doing this, because some people listening to this will think, what are you talking about this stuff for? And I'm going like, this is absolutely central to moving forward in your business. This is Practice Growth HQ. You are on this podcast because you want to grow your practice, and experiencing failure and how you react to it is absolutely critical. Now, Anissa's journey, as I've alluded to a couple of times already, in my view, is, I'm going to say, semi-unprecedented. I don't know, perhaps we can find someone else who's been through a similar path, but I can't think of anyone in the dental space who's had the number of iterations that Anissa's had. And I've only connected with her in the last 10 years. I don't know what happened before that, although I have read her book, which is excellent, by the way. I didn't mention that in the intro. If it seems, listeners, like we're spending a fair bit of time talking about fear, it is that ability to recognize what it is, to step through it, to get knocked over again and again and again, and pick yourself up and say, well, what was the lesson that taught me? I must admit, for me personally, in business, there's been times I've been like, oh, the shame, the embarrassment, the humiliation. Like, people are not going to think that I'm ... because I failed in this space. And yet some level of failure is just inevitable, because we're constantly moving into that zone of, what do they call it? Conscious incompetence.
yeah. And it's honestly, fear is actually something that is meant to be there for us. And fear, again, like you talked about shame, you talked about guilt, you talked about blame, right? And that's like lower level energy, lower level frequency. And it will keep us stuck, because what's meant for us is abundance, right? But we've got to navigate that through that. And I will tell you, like, I'm very proud, right? As you're sharing, I am a practice owner. I own a practice. I've got a couple associates. I own a software company, which is education. I've had a very, very, very successful coaching program. We help practices grow. They're growing by $1 million US a year easily. I now have Digital Floss, which is my marketing agency, and I would not have become who I am if I was afraid about what people think about me. And if we can just kind of sit there for a minute, right? Because that itself is holding us back from all of the abundance that's meant for us. And so I start to think about, at some point, and even like 5 years ago, and as you knew me, Angus, right? Like, I remember even 5 years ago when I was starting to coach, or even when I was doing marketing, I was the first in the industry to start teaching Facebook marketing. And then people were like, oh, she's the marketing girl. And I'm like, oh, well, I know how to grow companies by millions. And all of a sudden, because I was listening to what people think, I played small. And so I stopped helping practices with marketing, and I had to prove something to other people. And so all of a sudden I started getting into coaching and speaking and like all of these things, which is great. Like, I helped a lot of people, But the reality is that I was making decisions on people telling me that I wasn't good enough as I was. And the truth is I am. And here I am back full circle now, running a powerful social media agency to help people to get seen as their authentic selves so that they can find the people that need to be healed, which is essentially what we're doing, right? But as my journey went along, people were like, oh, she's just coaching because she can't make money in her dental practice. Right. So I heard that stuff too. That's why she's a coach. And the reality is that I've been called to be people's guides, right? I've been called to help people, but I heard that too. And so for years, I did not expand. I stayed small. I didn't push out on social media the things that I knew because I was afraid that people would share these things and I didn't like the feeling. But the reason why I didn't like that feeling, I later discovered went back to childhood. What was that moment? What was that event where I felt shame? Right. And so I went back and I did my work and I said, I want to see the truth. And I saw the truth in childhood of what happened where I first felt shame. Okay. And so I was able to look at it. I was able to forgive that experience and that moment because it wasn't that person's fault. They didn't intend to hurt me. But what happened is that I never wanted to feel that feeling of when I felt. And until I forgave that person, I was always holding on to that fear. And so I released and forgave them. And at that moment, I became free. I became free and I no longer cared what people thought about me at all. At all, like capital at capital all. And when that happened, that's when all of a sudden people were like, oh my gosh, she's roaring, she's glowing. And that's when my coaching program all of a sudden like massively shot up because people were like, oh my gosh, you can help me. Or even now, I'm being very vocal about what's going on with AI and marketing and what's going on with Google. And there's a lot of shifts happening right now. And I am confident and I'm firm. And some people might not agree with me and they may say, no, Google's fine. And I'm like, oh, really? That's what they said when AOL was there and Google came, right? Or that's what we said when Yellow Pages were in. And so now I can be confident and bold. And as a result, I get to guide people and help people that need to find me. And that's what you need to do in your dental practice right now. You need to stop hiding and stop being afraid and stop stepping into fear to become the person that you're meant to be. You've been called to be a healer and to guide the people that need to be healed into their healing. And we cannot do that if we're continuing to be afraid to invest in ourselves, be afraid to invest in our businesses, because really, as it relates to that, if we knew how to do it ourselves, we'd do it anyway. We'd already know how to do it. And it's like, I talked about my dog. I talked about this morning, we walked on the beach without a leash. I couldn't do that 5 weeks ago. And I was looking on YouTube and I'm like, how do I train my dog? Because she's a Velcro dog and she sees other dogs and she's whimpering and I can't take her to the beach. And all of a sudden, I found someone, friend recommended somebody. I looked on their social media and I saw their videos and I was like, these people know what they're doing. They've got to train my dog. And I'm like, can we start on Monday? They're like, it's going to be $4,000 US for 3 weeks to 1 hour. And I crave freedom with my dog and freedom to travel with her than I crave money. I crave freedom more. And I told her I'm going to be the most coachable. And so I did the work because if I know how to do it, I wouldn't be there. And that's the key. Like for people that are working with you, for people that are working with practice coaches, I'm no longer doing coaching. Right now, I'm all in with my marketing agency. But like whatever it is that you need, find a guide.
Yeah.
So that they can help you.
I just want to rewind a bit. Did you hear that, listeners? What are the boxes that she's checked in close succession? Started as a practitioner, then became a practice owner, then became a coach, then became an author, then set up a software company, and now she's got a marketing agency. Like, I've got two messages here. One is that this stuff we're talking about is critical for that stepping forward, and indeed, Anissa's outlined why that is the case. The second thing is, if you're listening to this and you're going, but I don't want all that, well, you know what? Take a pinch of that. Take just a little bit, take a dose of that and go, well, there must be something more. Because I've always taken the view, who do we serve by playing small? Maybe you've got something where you're helping a handful of people, but as we get older, we start to look at what's the impact, what difference have I made, etc. And I think that's one of the things that's really coming through. Look, Anissa, there's many things I could pick at from what you just said, but there's one thing I am not going to let slide through without delving into, and that is your comment that you have helped practice grow by $1 million a year. And every single listener of Practice Growth HQ wants to know how you did that.
Oh, so the reality is that we first have to believe that it's for us. Okay. We have to believe that it's for us.
Anissa, I don't believe. Help me get past that.
Yeah. And again, why don't you believe? What's the reason why? Where is that stemming from? Who told you that you weren't enough? Right? Like, and so it's deep psychological reasons why this is actually all happening. And so I used to think when I was coaching that it was about tactics. So let me give you this whiteboard, let me give you the scorecard, let me reverse engineer your numbers, do this, do this, do this, do this, until I realized that I have to give people belief. I have to give people the belief that I see this, as I said before, I'm a seer. I see this in you before you see it in yourself. I believe, right? And the question is, why does this even matter? Why does it matter? What do you want? Why do you want? Why does it matter? What's got you frustrated right now? And what do you need to do that you're not doing? And so if you want that home, if you want that better life, if you want to put your kids in better schools, if you want to take care of your family, what do you need to do that you're not doing? Because if you are already doing it, you would already have it. And so we've got to change what we do. And so once we have that realization, then it becomes, all right, I'm ready. I'm willing. Okay. What do I need to do next? And honestly, what we need to look next at is, again, what you're currently doing. And so I love to look at the truth. Okay. And the truth comes from data. The truth doesn't come from emotion. Right. And so for me, that means looking at what have you done to get where you're at right now. And so we look at, for example, many practices are at $1 million. I thought so many more were making way more, but the reality, at least in the US, is most are not yet at $1 million, or 80% are not yet at $1 million.
Yep.
And so I look at it, and I look at patterns. I'm like, why aren't you there? And the reality is that the majority of their income is coming from fillings or 1 or 2 crowns. Okay. Or when you look at where are they spending their money, they're not, no one knows that they're there.
Yeah.
No one knows that you exist. So you have the budget for our team and for supplies, and then you get to marketing and there's zero because they're spending zero. So nobody knows you. So you have to look at, why don't we have what we have? And you have to be truthful. Okay. But then we look at, what was your best month? Oh, your best month was June. Why? Because we did 4 clear aligner cases and the other months we did 0. Huh. Well, what if we did 4 every month? What if we just did 4? What if we didn't shoot for 10, but we just started with 4? And then we now have that goal. And then now we can put that on another tool that we can look at with our team, which would be like the whiteboard. And many people have heard me talk about it, teach my whiteboard frameworks. And so now you're looking at it. And then if you don't hit the goal, if you hit the goal, then you can change it the next month and increase it. And if you don't, you ask yourself, what's the issue? Okay. Guys, this is everything. All right. The first question you ask is, are you clinically competent? Okay. Because if you can have a patient that has all the money in the world and they want you to do the procedure, but you don't know how to do it, or you're not confident, or you can do the easy clear aligner cases, but you can't do the hard ones, or you can do single implants, but you can't do all on 4, or whatever it is, you can never help them. And so you've got to get clinically competent. The second, if you're like, no, Anissa, I'm good. Okay, so why are you only doing 3 cases of sleep or all on 4 or whatever? Why are you only doing 3? Number 1, I haven't focused on it. But number 2 is that I've not yet mastered communication competency. So I know how to do it, but I don't know how to get patients to say yes. And interestingly, again, it's emotional. So asking patients, what are your goals in your teeth, your mouth, and your smile? What else? Anything else? Anything else? If I could give you permission. So now people can share the truth. And it's like, why now? Why not last year? Why not next year? And they're talking about their smile. Help me understand, how do you feel when you smile? And they'll say, I feel embarrassed. I feel shame. Here we go again. Shame and embarrassment. Do you want me to help take away your shame? The answer is always going to be yes.
Yes.
So now we have, so now you see the teams and the doctors have to understand, they have to learn how to communicate from the heart. Okay. And communication competency is also, does your community know that you exist? Are you communicating to your community that you're there? Meaning, are you doing marketing? Do people know that you exist? And if the answer is no, we know what we need to do. And the third level of competency, again, if people are coming in, if they're saying yes, if you're clinically good, and you've got all of that in place. I've got one doctor, and he told me, he says, and he's one of our clients in Digital Floss, and he says, Anissa, the bamboo is coming, like it's starting to shoot up. All of these people are coming to see me. He's in a suburb of Chicago. And he's like, people are coming from Chicago to see me. I'm in a suburb. And he goes, what's happening? Because my social media content is from the heart and they're hearing my heart of who I am authentically. He goes, what's happening? They're coming in and they're like, I want you to do it. But the last piece that he needed, because he was focusing on communication training and marketing, he says, I need to have a way for people to pay. And so that's the last C, is cash competency. And so he found a partner that can help him with third-party financing. And I know your audience is in Australia, but it was US based, and it was a company called Cherry. And he said, when I switched to them, all of a sudden, every patient that wanted me to do the $10,000, $20,000 case, they were able to afford it. And so it's that process. And then it's starting to think bigger. Well, if I can do 4, there's an abundance of patients who need airway, who have airway issues. Like I just got off the phone with a call with a doctor, and her goal was like, she's just starting airway, but she wants to be like the person in all of the South of the US. I'm like, what's your goal? She says 5. I'm like, 5? What percentage of the population has airway issues? What percentage of the population is waking up at night? How many patients did you see last month? Okay, so that's the number that you could potentially help. 5? I'm like, do you see that abundance is all around you? What's your goal now? And so it's helping people to think bigger, giving them the strategy, giving them the tools, whether it's verbal skills training, systems, using a tool like a whiteboard to hold you accountable, scorecards to look at how many people are leaving without an appointment, or your AR. So you got to put systems in place, right? And that's how we help them grow. Pretty cool.
Wow. Listeners, what you need to do is you need to rewind this section and you need to listen to it again and again. And then what you need to do is get out your marker and check them off one by one. Have you done that? And I dare say what Anissa's come up with is, do not pass go. Get number 1 sorted, then move to number 2, then move to number 3. There's some incredible stuff there. I was speaking to another gentleman recently who was running a mastermind who had achieved similar kind of results. And these days, Anissa, everybody wants to know, what's the one thing? What's the silver bullet? What's the magic thing? And thankfully, he played along, because I would argue in many instances, it's not one thing. It's the aggregate of lots of things, but nevertheless. And he said to me, the number one thing that I found, if I could get people to change their mindset, believe it's possible, then everything else tended to fall into place. Yes, we need some systems. Yes, we need some education, some clinical competence, but many of that stuff it's enabled by a belief system that I can actually do this. And you go, okay, well, I can do this and I'm going to do this. What's next? That's a very different conversation from, what's the little hack? What's the new metric I need to put in place that's going to make all the difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, again, I believe, like, first of all, this is what I want. I think it's bigger than that. It's like, I believe that I can have it is like the next level up, but it's bigger than that. When you can get to the point when you realize that you are the creator of all things in your life, and there's no lack around you, just like an apple tree makes an apple with seeds, with more trees and more apples. There is no lack, right? If somebody else is doing airway and they're seeing 50 patients a month, it's out there. You just have to decide, and you have to see the abundance all over, and you have to say, you know what? I'm going to be part of that. And that's for me. And I'm worthy of it. Like, it's not for other people, which was that story that I was told. Oh, it's for people who come from this country have abundance, or people that look this way, right? And it's because somebody told us that just didn't know the truth, right? And so we have to realize and thank them for that, or forgive them for that, or just let that go. And when we start to step into like that, again, it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to be a speaker or coach. It's not about that at all. It's stepping into your calling, your purpose, as I share with my doctors, what's your assignment? And
Mm,
so my assignment initially was to be able to be a dentist and to change the lives of my patients, my community, and my team. That was my assignment, right? And I was able to do that. And then my business coach challenged me, right? And she's like, what's your impact going to be? And that's actually what led me to write the book, which led me to have other doctors say, can you teach me? And so I had no idea, honestly, that I'd be here at this point. But my story is not your story, and my number is not your number. Even you look at that. What's your number? What's your number that you want to make every year for the rest of your life? How much you need? We reverse engineer wealth with my doctors. Like with that and this amount annual return over 10 years or 5 years, and you're going to take 8%, and how much are you going to make? How much you need to put in place now? And then you're like, okay, great. Wow. I didn't realize it was actually that easy. It's just a couple more clear aligner cases, and I get to have wealth and true freedom.
mm,
But my number is not your number because guess what? Some people don't have kids. So their
mm,
number doesn't have to be the same, or their house is paid for. For some people, they're older than I am. So their number has to be different, or they're younger than I am, right? So your journey is your journey, right? And so that's the beautiful thing. Your goals are your goals, your dream is your dream. And what was meant for me and my assignment is not what's meant for you, but stepping into your calling honestly, guys, and thinking bigger and understanding that it's for you is the message of why I was brought to be here on this podcast. And so hopefully you're hearing that channel through me to you that there's something bigger meant for you, right? And finding the guides, like I found my guide who could help me train my dog, right? Or all
mm.
the other mentors. I think that's why too, you're like Anissa's been able to do a lot of things. I've had a lot of mentors. I've done nothing on my own. Absolutely nothing on
Mm,
my own,
mm.
right? I'm creative and a creator, but I've had to have some guidance. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Look, I think honestly, the message from Anissa and me for all the listeners is like, if you are looking for a sign, this is the sign right now, this moment. This is you. It's like the shift can take place right now. If you are looking for permission for this right now, Anissa and I are giving you that permission. We hope this is the moment where you'll write to us and say, "Hey, I was listening to your podcast driving home from work and feeling a bit soul crushed. And I realized that this thing was, I just needed to decide." And we encourage you to do that. Anissa, look, unfortunately, we are running out of time. You're so full of enthusiasm. I'm going to try and get you to squeeze into perhaps a couple of minutes at the most what you're seeing in dental marketing, because it's a highly dynamic space, and you've alluded to a number of things. If you could give the listeners a 1 minute, 2 minute soundbite on dental marketing in 2025, what would you say?
Yeah, I think you need to be very aware of what's happening right now with AI. All right. We're seeing it, it's happening. And the days of us relying only on Google, they're changing. We pick up our iPhone and Siri's now with the new iPhone connected directly to ChatGPT,
Mm,
right? People are now searching through ChatGPT. You go to Siri and ask for, where can I find the closest pharmacy? And it's taking you
mm,
to Apple Maps,
mm,
right? And so relying only on Google and Google reviews are something that you really need to take notice of. Also, social media is becoming no longer something that we kind of think is something we should do. It's actually becoming a requirement.
mm,
And this is how people can connect with us emotionally and really move up to become that patient and say, I want you. But at the same time, from AI SEO, leveraging social media to be able to use it to train the AI, putting the voice content, okay, because you can't get this from photos, you can't get this from stuffing keywords in your website, but video content uploading to Google My Business, leveraging also LinkedIn and X as well to be able to optimize for Bing and Microsoft, and how that relates to ChatGPT and OpenAI is huge. Maybe I'm opening up a loop here that's going to make you more curious. Reach out. I'd love to share more insight on this. But there's definitely a lot of powerful things happening. Or follow me on social media. Like I'm talking a lot about this now because there's a major shift happening.
yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the one thing I would just say, understanding the Australian audience the way I do, you know what Anissa is awesome at doing? Doing Anissa. And some of you are listening to her, and that's the first thing I remember about Anissa. I joined a course of hers many years ago, and it's like she's so full of energy and enthusiasm. And some of you are like, but that's not me, Angus. And I'm like, that's fine, but find your voice, because there will be some patients, frankly, who won't resonate with Anissa. There'll be some patients who don't resonate with me. It's just the way things go. But at the moment, there's a void there. And what we want to see you fill that void so that the people can identify and go, you know what, I like the sound of this guy. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
And I will say this, like we have a marketing agency, it's US based, right? So I'm not even taking clients in Australia, but I will tell you that the stuff that I teach and the stuff that I'm sharing 100% translates to the Australian audience. I know the Australian audience. I know when I was teaching social media and Facebook, we had a ton of practices that we helped with marketing. And I know that the marketing guidelines and rules are different. And what's beautiful and authentic about social media is, again, it allows you to have people to see your authentic self. So take that content, upload it to Google My Business, upload it to LinkedIn, because Microsoft owns LinkedIn, they own Bing, and Bing is optimizing right now for ChatGPT. So definitely just looking at what I'm posting in terms of the strategy is something that I highly encourage that you look into, because it's really going to help you to be seen so you can help heal the people that need to find you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving so freely during our time together, Anissa. If people do want to follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Dr. Anissa Holmes. You can follow me on Facebook. My website for my agency is Digital Floss, and then Dr. Anissa Holmes. So find me on social. We'll connect. If we're meant to connect, we'll find each other.
Absolutely. Anissa, ANISSAHOLMES. And Anissa, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone. Well, we have covered a lot there, haven't we? It's been like drinking from a fire hydrant for the last 30 minutes. But as I like to say to you, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power, which begs the question, what is one thing you can do as a result of what you heard today? Make sure you go and do that before you go into the next thing. Otherwise, if you got some value from our time together, we'd really appreciate if you'd head to where you heard this podcast and leave us a review to give us the encouragement to bring you more great content every week on Practice Growth HQ.